Commander Jiho stared at the bright screens in front of him. The control room of Border Station Theta 7 was quiet, except for the soft humming of machines. He had been watching the empty space around their station for 12 hours now. Nothing ever happened here at the edge of Vaxaran space. The most exciting thing he had seen all week was a small asteroid floating past. Jiho stretched his long arms and yawned. His purple skin gleamed under the station lights. Like all Vaxarans, he was tall and thin with large black eyes. He had been stationed here for 3 years, watching for any ships that might try to enter their territory without permission. In all that time, only 2 small trading vessels had come close enough to notice. The Vaxaran Confederation controlled this part of space for over 200 years. Their technology was far better than any other species they had met. Their ships were faster, their weapons stronger, and their shields nearly impossible to break. Most alien races knew better than to bother them. "Commander," called Lieutenant Minho from across the room. "I'm getting some strange readings on the long-range sensors." Jiho walked over to Minho's station. The young officer's green fingers moved quickly over his controls. Minho had only been assigned to the station 6 months ago, fresh from the academy. He was still excited about every small blip on the sensors. "What kind of strange readings?" Jiho asked, trying not to sound bored. "There's something moving toward us from the outer system," Minho said. His voice was higher than usual. "The computer says it's traveling very fast, faster than our fastest ships." Jiho frowned. That was impossible. No known species had ships faster than Vaxaran vessels. "Show me the data." The main screen changed to show a map of nearby space. A small red dot was moving toward their station. Numbers appeared next to it, showing speed and distance. Jiho's eyes went wide. The readings had to be wrong. "Run a full diagnostic on the sensors," he ordered. "This can't be right." Minho's fingers flew over his controls. After a few minutes, he looked up with worry in his large eyes. "The sensors are working perfectly, Commander. The readings are correct." Jiho felt a cold feeling in his stomach. He pressed a button on his collar. "Captain Yunji to the control room. Priority 1. Within minutes, Captain Yunji arrived. She was older than Jiho, with silver marks on her purple skin showing her rank. Her black uniform was perfectly clean as always. She had commanded Border Station Theta 7 for 8 years, and had never seen any real action. "What's the situation?" she asked in her calm voice. Jiho pointed at the main screen. "Unknown contact approaching at impossible speed. No response to our identification requests." Yunji studied the data for a long moment. Her expression didn't change, but Jiho noticed her hands tightening into fists. "Have you tried all standard contact frequencies?" "Yes, Captain," Minho answered. "No response on any channel. The ship is still accelerating toward us." "Ship?" Yunji asked. "You're sure it's a ship?" Senior Analyst Hayok spoke up from his station in the corner. He was the oldest member of their crew, with deep lines around his eyes from years of staring at screens. "The energy signature suggests artificial construction. Definitely a vessel of some kind. But, Captain, there's something else." "Go ahead," Yunji said. "I've been comparing the signature to our database of known ship designs," Hayok said slowly. "The computer found a partial match." "Partial match to what?" "Human technology." The control room became very quiet. Everyone stopped what they were doing and looked at Hayok. Humans were one of the most primitive species they knew about. The Confederation had been listening to their radio signals for decades. They had seen their small, slow ships limping through their own solar system. The humans barely had the technology to reach their own moon. "That's impossible," Yunji said. "Human ships are tiny and weak. They use chemical rockets like children playing with toys." "I know it sounds crazy," Hayok said, "but the energy patterns match. The computer is 70% certain." Jiho looked at the screen again. The red dot was getting closer. At its current speed, it would reach their station in less than an hour. "Maybe it's a human ship that was captured and improved by another species? Or maybe our intelligence about humans is very old," Minho suggested quietly. Captain Yunji walked to the center of the control room. She pressed several buttons. On the main console. "All stations. This is Captain Yunji. We have an unknown contact approaching our position. Raise shields to full power and prepare all defensive systems." Around the station, lights began flashing. The deep hum of the shield generators grew louder. Weapons that had not been fired in years started charging their power cells. The crew moved quickly to their battle stations, even though most of them had never been in a real fight. "Try contacting them again," Yunji ordered. "Use all languages in our database." Minho sent out messages in over 50 different alien languages. He used the standard peaceful greeting that all space-traveling species understood. The messages went out into space toward the approaching ship. Minutes passed. No response came back. "Distance to contact?" Yunji asked. 30 minutes at current speed," Jiho reported. "Captain, I'm reading massive energy buildups from their ship. Whatever kind of weapons they have, they're charging them." "Weapons?" Yunji's voice was sharp. "Are you certain?" "Yes, Captain. Multiple energy sources coming online. This is definitely a warship." For the first time, Yunji looked worried. "How big is this ship?" Hyok checked his readings. "Approximately 2 kilometers long. That's larger than our heavy cruisers." The control room was filled with tension. A 2-kilometer warship with unknown technology was racing toward them with weapons ready. This was not the kind of situation they trained for at the academy. "Send a priority message to Fleet Command," Yunji ordered. "Tell them we have a potentially hostile contact of unknown origin." "Should I request backup?" Jiho asked. "The nearest fleet is 6 hours away," Yunji said. "We're on our own." The minutes crawled by. Everyone watched the red dot on the screen get closer and closer. The unknown ship had not slowed down at all. It was coming straight at them like it owned this part of space. 15 minutes to contact, Minho reported. His voice was shaking now. "Keep trying to contact them," Yunja said. "There has to be some explanation." But deep in her heart, she was beginning to understand that this was not a lost exploration ship. This was not a diplomatic mission. The vessel approaching them had come here for a fight. 10 minutes, Jiho said. "All weapons ready, Captain," reported the weapons officer. 5 minutes. "Captain," Minho shouted suddenly. "I'm receiving a transmission." "Put it on speakers," Yunji ordered quickly. The speakers crackled to life. A voice spoke in perfect Vaxiran language, but the accent was strange, cold, dangerous. "Attention. Vaxiran Border Station. This is the human warship Retribution. You have ignored our people's peaceful messages for 30 years. You have treated us like we don't matter. That ends today." The control room was dead silent. Everyone stared at the speakers. The voice continued. "Surrender your station immediately. Lower your shields and prepare to be boarded. You have 60 seconds to comply." 60 seconds? Yunji gasped. "If you do not surrender," the voice said, "we will destroy your station and everyone on it. Your choice. 60 seconds. The transmission ended. The countdown timer on their screens showed 58 seconds and falling. Captain Yunji looked around at her crew. They were all staring at her, waiting for orders. Her mind raced. Humans weren't supposed to have ships like this. They weren't supposed to be able to threaten a Vaxiran station. 40 seconds, Minho whispered. "Captain, what are your orders?" Jiho asked. Yunji straightened her shoulders. No primitive human ship was going to make her surrender. "Maintain shields. Prepare to fire. 20 seconds. "Captain, are you sure?" Hyok asked. "Maybe we should—" 10 seconds. "Hold your positions," Yunji said firmly. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The timer reached 0. Nothing happened for a moment. Then space around their station lit up with brilliant flashes of light as the human warship opened fire. Admiral Kyung stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, watching the alien station through the main view screen. The massive Vaxiran structure looked like a metal flower with weapons growing from its petals. Its shields glowed blue in the darkness of space. For 30 years, humans had tried to talk to these aliens. For 30 years, they had been ignored. Not today. "Tactical report," Kyung said in his calm voice. He was a short man with gray hair and scars on his hands from years of military service. His brown eyes were hard as stone. "Their shields are at full power," reported Tactical Officer Sunho. He was young, but had graduated top of his class from the Earth Naval Academy. "Standard Vaxiran defensive grid. Our intelligence was correct about their technology. And our weapons? All systems. Ready, Admiral. Plasma lance at full charge. Missile tubes loaded. Point defense systems online." Kyung nodded. The UES Retribution was the most advanced warship humanity had ever built. It had taken 15 years to design and 5 years to construct. The aliens had no idea what they were facing. "Communications Officer Nari, send our final warning," Kyung ordered. Nari was a small woman with quick fingers and a sharp mind. She had learned 12 alien languages in preparation for this mission. "Message sent, Admiral. No response from the station." "They think we're still using chemical rockets," said Colonel Taewon from his position near the back of the bridge. He commanded the ship's marine forces and was ready to board the station if needed. "Their intelligence about us is decades old." "Their mistake," Kyung said simply. The bridge was quiet except for the soft humming of computers and life support systems. 50 crew members worked at their stations, all focused on their jobs. Many of them had family members who had tried to make peaceful contact with alien species. All of those attempts had failed. "Time?" Kyung asked. 30 seconds left on our ultimatum," Sunho reported. Kyung looked around his bridge. These men and women had trained for this moment for years. Earth's government had finally decided that peaceful contact wasn't working. If aliens wouldn't talk to humans as equals, then humans would have to earn their respect the hard way. "Chief Engineer Soman, status of all systems?" "All green, Admiral," came the reply from the engine room. Soman was the best engineer in the Earth fleet. She had personally designed many of the Retribution systems. "Fusion reactors at 100%. All weapons systems optimal." 20 seconds, Sunho said. Through the view screen, they could see the Vaxaran station. It was beautiful in its own way, all smooth curves and gleaming metal. But beauty meant nothing when the people inside refused to treat humans with basic respect. 10 seconds. "All weapons. Prepare to fire," Kyung ordered. 5 seconds. The bridge crew held their breath. Time. Silence stretched for a moment. The Vaxaran station sat in space, its shields glowing, its weapons pointed at the human ship. "They're not surrendering," Nari reported. "Then we teach them about human resolve," Kyung said. "All weapons, open fire." The UES Retribution erupted with light and energy. The main plasma lance fired first, sending a beam of superheated matter across space at the speed of light. It struck the Vaxaran shields, and they flared bright blue for a moment before flickering. "Direct hit," Sunho reported with excitement in his voice. "Their shields are down to 80%. Continue firing." Missile launchers opened and sent dozens of smart warheads racing toward the station. Each missile was guided by its own small computer and could change course to avoid defensive fire. The Vaxarans had never seen weapons like these. "Their shields are failing," Sunho shouted. "Down to 40%. On the view screen, they could see flashes of light as the station's weapons tried to fight back. But the Retribution's shields were based on completely different technology. The alien weapons barely scratched them. "Hull breach on the station," reported Lieutenant Commander Seo Hyun from her fighter control station. "They're losing atmosphere from 3 sections." "Are they trying to surrender?" Kyung asked. "No signals from them, Admiral," Nari said. "They're still fighting." More plasma beams lanced out from the Retribution. The station's shields collapsed completely, and the weapons began hitting the hull directly. Metal glowed red-hot, and then white-hot, before melting away. "Admiral!" Sunho called out. "I'm reading massive power fluctuations from their reactor core. I think they're trying to overload it." Kyung's expression didn't change. "Distance to safe detonation? We need to be at least 50 kilometers away. Helm, back us off. Maintain weapons fire." The Retribution began moving away from the station while continuing to pound it with weapons. The Vaxaran structure was breaking apart now, huge chunks of metal spinning away into space. "New contact," Sunho suddenly yelled. 3 Vaxaran ships, dropping out of hyperspace." On the screen, 3 sleek alien warships appeared in flashes of blue light. They were smaller than the Retribution, but moved with deadly grace. Their weapons were already charging. "Finally, a real fight," Colonel Taewon said with a grin. "All weapons, new targets," Kyung ordered. "Show them what human engineering can do." The 3 Vaxaran ships spread out and began their attack. Their energy weapons were powerful and accurate. They had been designed to fight other Vaxaran ships and had never been defeated in battle, but they had never fought humans before. The Retribution spun in space like a dancer, its engines allowing impossible maneuvers. Human ships were built differently than alien vessels. Where the Vaxarans focused on pure firepower, humans had learned to value speed and flexibility. "Target the lead ship," Kayung said. "Full spread of missiles." 20 missiles streaked toward the closest Vaxaran vessel. The alien ship tried to shoot them down, but human missiles were too fast and too smart. Half of them made it through the defensive fire and exploded against the ship's hull. "Enemy ship heavily damaged," Sun Ho reported. "They're falling back." The other two Vaxaran ships pressed their attack. Energy beams lit up space as both sides exchanged fire. But it quickly became clear that the aliens were outmatched. Their weapons couldn't penetrate human shield technology, while human weapons cut through their armor like paper. "Second enemy ship destroyed," Seo Hyun announced as one of the alien vessels exploded in a ball of fire. The last Vaxaran ship tried to escape, but it was too late. The Retribution's weapons tracked it across space and tore it apart with precise fire. "All enemy contacts destroyed," Sun Ho said. "The area is clear." Kyung looked at the wreckage floating in space. The mighty Vaxaran border station was gone. 3 of their warships had been destroyed, and the UES Retribution had barely taken any damage. "Communications, send a message to Earth Command," Kyung ordered. "Tell them Phase 1 is complete. The Vaxarans know we exist now." "Yes, Admiral," Nari said, already working at her station. "What about survivors?" asked Dr. Mireille from her medical station. "Scan for life signs," Kyung said. "We're not murderers. If there are survivors, we'll rescue them." The ship's sensors reached out through space, looking for any signs of life in the wreckage. After a few minutes, they found escape pods from the station floating in the darkness. "I count 47 life signs," Somin reported from engineering. "All in emergency pods." "Bring them aboard," Kyung ordered. "But keep them under guard. I want to talk to them." As the Retribution's shuttle bays opened to receive the alien survivors, Kyung thought about what would happen next. This was just the beginning. Earth had more ships like the Retribution, and they were all moving toward Vaxaran space. For 30 years, humanity had offered friendship to the galaxy. They had sent peaceful messages and requested diplomatic contact. Every attempt had been ignored or rejected. The aliens thought humans were too primitive to matter. Today, that changed forever. "Admiral," Nari said from her station, "I'm receiving reports from our other fleets. The attacks on the Nexus shipyards and the communication relays were successful. The Vaxarans are completely caught off guard." Kyung smiled for the first time since the battle began. "Good. Send a message to all human fleets. Tell them to proceed to Phase 2. "What should I tell Earth Command about casualties?" Nari asked. "Tell them we had 0 losses," Kyung said. "And tell them the Vaxarans are finally ready to listen." Fleet Admiral Borum sat in her command chair aboard the Vaxaran flagship Star of Hegemony when the emergency messages started flooding in. Her purple skin had gone pale as she read report after report of human attacks across their territory. This was impossible. Humans were supposed to be primitive. "How many ships have we lost?" she asked her aide, Lieutenant Guangsu. 17 stations destroyed, Admiral, Guangsu said, his voice shaking. 31 ships either destroyed or missing. The humans are attacking everywhere at once. Borum's 4-fingered hands gripped the arms of her chair. In her 40 years of service, she had never seen such a coordinated assault. "Where did they get this technology?" "Our intelligence said they were still using chemical rockets." "Our intelligence was wrong, Admiral," said Commander Jinwoo from the tactical station. "These human ships are more advanced than ours in many ways." On the main screen, live feeds from across the Confederation showed the scope of the disaster. Human warships were striking at military targets with surgical precision. They moved faster than Vaxaran ships and hit harder than anyone thought possible. "Shoo, me, the attack on Nexus Prime," Borum ordered. The screen changed to show the massive Vaxaran shipyards in the Nexus system. These yards had been building warships for over a century. They were supposed to be the most heavily defended installations in Confederate space. Captain Dong-hyun's human strike force had made that defense meaningless. The recording showed 5 human ships dropping out of hyperspace directly inside the Nexus defense perimeter. Before the Vaxaran defenders could react, the human vessels had launched hundreds of small attack craft that swarmed over the shipyards like angry insects. "How did they get past our sensor grid?" Borum demanded. "They didn't get past it," Jinwoo said quietly. "They went through it. Their ships seem to have some kind of stealth technology we've never seen before." On the screen, the human attack craft were tearing apart half-completed Vaxaran warships. Each small fighter moved with impossible speed and agility. Their weapons were tiny compared to ship-mounted guns, but they were incredibly accurate. "Our pilots are trying to intercept," the tactical officer reported, "but the human fighters are too fast. They're like nothing we've ever faced." Borum watched in horror as her people's newest battleship, still under construction, was torn apart by human weapons. The ship had been almost ready for launch. It would have been the most powerful vessel in the Confederate fleet. Now it was just floating scrap metal. "Switch to the communication relay attacks," she ordered. The screen showed another nightmare. Commander Ji-Yeon's stealth destroyers had somehow appeared throughout Confederate space without being detected. They were systematically destroying the communication satellites that kept the Confederation connected. "Without the relays, our fleets can't coordinate," Guangsu said. "Each system is fighting alone. How many relays have we lost?" 60%, and climbing. The humans seem to know exactly where each one is located. Borum felt cold fear in her stomach. The communication relays were top secret. Their locations were known only to the highest levels of Confederate command. How had the humans learned about them? "Admiral," came a voice from the communication station. "I have Council Leader Vorthak on the emergency channel." "Put him through." The screen changed to show the interior of the Confederate Council chambers on the homeworld. Council Leader Vorthak's normally calm purple face was twisted with panic and anger. "Admiral Borum, what is happening out there?" he demanded. "We're receiving reports of human attacks across 12 systems." "The reports are accurate, Council Leader," Borum said. "The humans have launched a massive coordinated assault on our territory." "That's impossible. Our intelligence reports said they were decades behind us technologically. Our intelligence was wrong." Vorthak's large black eyes went wide. "How wrong?" "Very wrong. Their ships are superior to ours in speed, stealth, and firepower. Their weapons can penetrate our shields like they don't exist." "Are you telling me that humans are more advanced than we are?" Borum hesitated. It hurt to admit, but the truth was obvious. In military technology, yes. They are far ahead of us. The council leader was quiet for a long moment. In the background, other council members could be heard arguing and shouting. Finally, Vorthak spoke again. "How many ships do they have?" "We don't know. They appeared simultaneously in dozens of systems. Either they have hundreds of ships or their ships can move faster than anything we've ever seen." "What about our own fleets?" "I'm recalling all available ships to protect the core systems. But Admiral, we need to consider other options." "Such as?" "Negotiation." Vorthak's face turned dark purple with anger. "The Vaxaran Confederation does not negotiate with primitives." "They're not primitives anymore," Borum said firmly. "They just destroyed our most important military installations in a matter of hours. We need to face reality." Before Vorthak could respond, alarms began ringing throughout the flagship. Emergency lights flashed red as officers ran to their stations. "What's happening?" Borum demanded. "Human ships!" Jinwoo shouted. 6 contacts dropping out of hyperspace. They're right on top of us." The main screen switched back to external view. 6 sleek human warships had appeared around the Vaxaran fleet like hunting wolves surrounding prey. They were smaller than the Confederate vessels but moved with deadly purpose. "All ships, battle stations," Borum ordered. "Prepare for combat." But even as she gave the order, she knew it was probably useless. The humans had already proven they could destroy Vaxaran ships with ease. "Incoming transmission from the lead human vessel," the communications officer reported. "Put it through." A human face appeared on the screen. The alien looked similar to Vaxaran's, but was shorter and had strange, small eyes. When he spoke, his voice was calm, but carried an undertone of steel. "I am Captain Jiwoo of the Earthship Vengeance. You will surrender your ships immediately and prepare to be boarded." "This is Fleet Admiral Borum of the Vaxaran Confederation," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "You are in violation of Confederate space. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." The human captain's expression didn't change. "Admiral, You have exactly 2 minutes to lower your shields and power down your weapons. If you do not comply, we will destroy your entire fleet. You're outnumbered 6 ships to 24, Borum said. Even with superior technology, you cannot defeat us all. Captain Jiwoo smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. Admiral, you still don't understand what you're facing. 2 minutes. The transmission ended. Borum looked around her bridge at her officers. They were all staring at her, waiting for orders. These were good people who had served the Confederation faithfully for years. They didn't deserve to die because their leaders had been too proud to talk to humans. Admiral, Jinwoo said quietly, what are your orders? Borum closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, her decision was made. Signal all ships, lower shields and power down weapons. Admiral. Guangsu gasped. You're surrendering? I'm saving lives, Borum said firmly. We can't win this fight. The humans have already proven that. Around the Vaxaran fleet, ships began powering down their weapons and lowering their defensive shields. It was the first time in over 2 centuries that a Confederate fleet had surrendered to another species. On the screen, the human ships moved closer. Their weapons remained trained on the Vaxaran vessels, ready to fire if anyone tried to resist. Transmission from Captain Jiwoo, the communications officer reported. Put him through. The human captain appeared again. This time his expression was less hostile. Admiral Borum, you made the right choice. Your crews will be treated according to the rules of war. What do you want from us? Borum asked. Simple. We want the Confederation to finally acknowledge that humanity exists. We want diplomatic relations, and we want the same respect you would give to any other spacefaring species. That's all? That's all we ever wanted, Captain Jiwoo said. For 30 years we tried to contact you peacefully. You ignored us. You treated us like we didn't matter. So we decided to get your attention in a way you couldn't ignore. Borum felt shame wash over her. We thought you were primitive. So, we noticed. That was your mistake. What happens now? Now you contact your government and tell them that humanity is ready to talk, but this time we talk as equals. Supreme Commander Vorthax stood on the bridge of the Confederate flagship, Pride of Hegemony, as it led the last major Vaxaran fleet toward Earth's forces. This was their final chance to prove that the Confederation was still the dominant power in this region of space. He could not allow primitive humans to defeat his people. Status report, he commanded. 237 ships in formation, reported his tactical officer. All weapon systems at full power. We outnumber the human fleet 3-1, Vorthax nodded with satisfaction. The humans might have superior technology in some areas, but they couldn't possibly have enough ships to match the full might of the Confederate Navy. This battle would restore Vaxaran honor. Communications broadcast to all ships, he ordered. Today we show these humans what happens when they challenge the Confederation. Fight with honor. The massive Vaxaran fleet moved through space like a cloud of metal death. Each ship bristled with weapons that could destroy cities. Their shields glowed with power strong enough to turn aside asteroids. For over 2 centuries, no force in the galaxy had been able to stand against them. But as they approached the human position, strange readings began appearing on their sensors. Sir, called the sensor operator, I'm detecting unusual energy signatures from the human ships. What kind of unusual? They appear to be changing. The ships are physically altering their configurations. Vorthax frowned. That's impossible. Ships don't change their shape. On the main screen, the human fleet became visible. There were only 80 ships, but as the Vaxarans watched in amazement, the human vessels began to transform. Sections of hull moved and rotated. Weapon ports opened in new locations. The ships were literally rebuilding themselves for battle. How are they doing that? Vorthax demanded. Unknown, sir. Our ships are built with fixed designs. We've never seen anything like this. Captain Jiwoo's voice came over the communication system. Supreme Commander Vorthax, this is your final chance to surrender. Order your fleet to stand down, and no more lives will be lost. Never, Vorthax snarled. All ships attack formation. Destroy the human fleet. The Vaxaran ships spread out and began their assault. Energy weapons lit up space as hundreds of beams lanced toward the human vessels. It was the most concentrated firepower ever assembled by the Confederation. But something was wrong. The human ships were moving in ways that violated everything Vorthax knew about space combat. They spun and twisted through space like living creatures, avoiding most of the incoming fire. Direct hits on multiple human ships, the tactical officer reported. But, sir, their shields are absorbing our weapons without any apparent damage. Impossible. Increase firepower. Already at maximum, sir. On the screen, the human ships finished their transformation. They no longer looked like the vessels that had started the battle. New weapon systems had emerged from their hulls. Additional shield generators had extended on mechanical arms. The entire fleet had become something completely different. "Incoming missiles!" the sensor operator shouted. Thousands of small projectiles streaked out from the human ships. But these weren't normal missiles. As they flew through space, they, too, began to change. Some split into multiple warheads. Others extended new guidance systems. A few seemed to disappear entirely, only to reappear behind Vaxaran ships. "Point defense systems, engage!" Vorthax ordered. The Vaxaran ships fired their defensive weapons, trying to shoot down the incoming missiles. They managed to destroy many of them, but far too many got through. Explosions bloomed across the Confederate fleet as the strange human weapons found their targets. 23 ships reporting major damage, the tactical officer said with growing panic in his voice. "The human missiles are penetrating our armor like it's made of paper." "How is that possible?" "I don't know, sir. They seem to adapt to our defenses in real time." Vorthax watched his mighty fleet being torn apart by an enemy that was outnumbered. 3-1. This wasn't how space battles were supposed to work. The side with more ships and bigger guns was supposed to win. "New contacts," the sensor operator called out. "Human ground forces are teleporting directly onto our ships." Teleporting? That's impossible. But the reports kept coming in. Human soldiers were somehow appearing inside Vaxaran vessels, bypassing their shields and armor completely. These weren't normal boarding actions. The humans were using technology that seemed to ignore the laws of physics. Major Warship led one of these boarding teams. His soldiers moved through Vaxaran ships like ghosts, appearing and disappearing at will. Their weapons were small but incredibly effective. They could stun entire crews without killing anyone, then take control of ship systems. "Engineering reports that human troops have seized the engine room," came a panicked voice over the ship's communications system. "They're demanding we surrender the vessel." "Security teams to all decks," Vorthax ordered. "Repel boarders." But it was no use. The human soldiers were too fast, too skilled, and they had technology that the Vaxarans couldn't counter. Within minutes, 20. Confederate ships had been captured from the inside. On the main screen, more human ships were arriving. But these weren't warships. They were smaller vessels that seemed designed for a different purpose. "What are those ships doing?" Vorthax asked. "They appear to be rescuing survivors from damaged vessels," the tactical officer said in confusion. "They're pulling our people out of wrecked ships and taking them to safety." Vorthax couldn't understand it. The humans were destroying his fleet while simultaneously saving the lives of his crews. What kind of enemy did that? Engineer specialist Yuna's modifications to the human weapon systems were proving devastatingly effective. Every shot fired taught the human computers something new about Vaxaran defenses. By the end of the battle, human weapons were perfectly calibrated to penetrate Confederate shields and armor. "Sir," the tactical officer said quietly, "we've lost over half our fleet. The remaining ships are requesting permission to retreat." Vorthax looked around his bridge. His officers were staring at him with fear and desperation. These were good people who had followed him into battle believing they could win. Now they were dying because he had been too proud to accept reality. "All ships," he said into his communicator, "cease fire and surrender." The bridge went silent. In the 200 years of the Confederation's existence, no Supreme Commander had ever given such an order. "Sir?" the tactical officer asked. "You heard me. Order all ships to stand down." As the Vaxaran fleet powered down their weapons, a new transmission came from the human flagship. This time it wasn't Captain Jiwoo. Instead, a human woman appeared. On the screen, "I am Colonel Hyawan, representing the Earth Alliance," she said. Her voice was firm, but not hostile. "Supreme Commander Vorthax, you and your people fought bravely. Your wounded will be treated, and your dead will be honored." "What do you want from us?" Vorthax asked. "The same thing we've always wanted. Recognition. Respect." A place at the table when galactic decisions are made, you could have simply asked. Colonel Hyuan's expression hardened slightly. We did ask. For 30 years. You ignored us. Vorthax felt shame wash over him. We thought you were beneath our notice. That was your mistake. But it doesn't have to be a permanent one. What are your terms? Simple. The Confederation will acknowledge Earth as an equal power. You will establish formal diplomatic relations with us. Your military will withdraw from disputed territories while we negotiate boundaries. And if we refuse? Colonel Hyuan gestured toward the wreckage of the Vaxiran fleet floating around them. I think you already know the answer to that. Vorthax looked at the destruction surrounding his flagship. In less than 6 hours, the humans had crippled the entire Confederate military. They had done it with fewer ships and smaller crews. But more importantly, they had done it while taking prisoners and rescuing survivors. These humans were not just technologically superior. They were tactically brilliant and morally disciplined. They had shown that they could destroy the Confederation completely. But they chose to offer mercy instead. I accept your terms, Vorthax said quietly. Good. You'll be taken to a secure location where you can contact your government. I suggest you recommend that they accept these same terms. And if they don't, then we'll have this conversation with whoever replaces them. As human ships moved in to escort the surviving Confederate vessels, Vorthax realized that everything had changed. The age of Vaxiran dominance was over. A new power had risen in the galaxy, and it was led by the species they had dismissed as primitive. The humans had taught them a lesson that would be remembered for generations. Never underestimate your neighbors, no matter how small they might seem. Ambassador Seung walked through the corridors of what had once been the Vaxiran Confederation Council chambers. 6 months had passed since the war ended, and the building had been transformed into the headquarters of the New Earth Alliance. The purple walls had been repainted in neutral colors, and human and Vaxiran flags now hung side by side. It was hard to believe how much had changed in such a short time. Ambassador called Assistant Director Young-ho as he approached with a datapad in his hands. The morning briefings are ready for your review. Seung took the pad and scrolled through the reports. Trade agreements with the Zalarian Empire, scientific exchanges with the Corvan Republic, defense treaties with 12 different species, every day brought new requests from alien civilizations wanting to establish relations with humanity. How many new contact requests today? Seung asked. 17, Young-ho replied. Word about our victory over the Confederation has spread throughout this entire sector of the galaxy. Everyone wants to be friends with Earth now. Seung smiled at the irony. For 30 years, humans had begged for attention from their alien neighbors. Now those same neighbors were lining up to meet with human representatives. Schedule meetings with the most important ones, Seung said. But make sure we have time for the scientific delegation from Vaxira. Dr. Minji says their research on quantum physics could help us improve our ship engines. Already done. The Vaxiran scientists will arrive this afternoon. They entered the main conference room where the daily staff meeting was about to begin. The room was filled with both human and Vaxiran officials working together on various projects. It had taken months for the former enemies to learn to trust each other, but real progress was being made. Admiral Kyung stood at the head of the table, reviewing fleet positions on a large holographic display. The man who had led humanity's first military victory against an alien power was now responsible for keeping the peace throughout the region. Good morning, Admiral, Seung said as he took his seat. Good morning, Ambassador. I have updates from our patrol fleets. The hologram showed. Dozens of human ships spread across what had once been Confederate territory. But these weren't conquest fleets. They were protection forces, ensuring that the transition to the new political order remained peaceful. The Outer Rim sectors are stable, Kyung reported. No hostile contacts. The former Confederate colonies are adapting well to their new independence. And problems with local governments? A few minor disputes over trade routes, but nothing our diplomats can't handle. Most of the colonies are actually happy to be free from Confederate control. Council Representative Minji spoke up from her position near the window. The Vaxiran people are still adjusting to the idea that their government no longer controls half the galaxy. But the younger generation seems excited about the possibilities. Minji had been one of the first Vaxirans to openly support cooperation with humanity. Her work in establishing the new galactic protocols had been essential to the peaceful transition. What about the Confederation Council? Seung asked. Are they still causing problems? Some of the older members refuse to accept the new reality, Minji admitted. But they're being replaced by more practical politicians. The Vaxiran people want peace and prosperity, not more war. Dr. Young-ho looked up from his research notes. The scientific exchanges are going better than we hoped. Human engineering combined with Vaxiran theoretical knowledge is producing amazing results. We've already made breakthroughs in faster-than-light travel and energy production. Show them the latest numbers, Admiral Kyung said with pride. The hologram changed to show technical specifications. Our new joint-designed ships can travel twice as fast as anything we had before the war, Young-ho explained. And they use 60% less fuel. Both species benefit from sharing knowledge. Seung nodded with satisfaction. This was what they had always wanted, cooperation instead of conflict. The war had been necessary to get the aliens' attention, but the real victory was what came after. What about the exploration fleets? He asked. Captain Ji-hoon's expedition launched yesterday, Admiral Kyung replied. Joint human Vaxiran crews heading toward the Andromeda contact zone. If there are other species out there, we'll find them. And this time, we'll make contact the right way. The thought of new alien species filled Seung with both excitement and concern. Humanity had learned a hard lesson about the importance of first impressions. They would not make the same mistakes the Confederation had made. Are the crews getting along? Better than expected, Kyung said. Captain Ji-hoon reports excellent cooperation between human and Vaxiran officers. The shared experience of exploring unknown space seems to bring out the best in both species. A soft chime indicated an incoming priority message. Assistant Director Young-ho activated the communication system, and a hologram of a young Vaxiran officer appeared. Ambassador Seung, this is Lieutenant Yoon-ji from Vaxiran Defense Command. We've detected a large fleet approaching from the outer darkness. Unknown configuration, but they're headed directly for our space. The room went quiet. Everyone remembered how humanity's first contact with the Confederation had gone. Were they about to face the same situation in reverse? How large is this fleet? Admiral Kyung asked. Over 300 ships, Admiral. Much larger than anything we've seen before. Hostile intent? Unknown. They haven't responded to our communication attempts. Seung looked around the room at the faces of both humans and Vaxirans. 6 months ago, these people had been enemies. Now they were allies, facing a potential new threat together. Admiral, prepare our fleets for possible combat, he ordered. But make sure they understand. We try talking first. Understood. I'll coordinate with Vaxiran Defense Command. Lieutenant Yoon-ji, Seung said to the hologram, tell your commanders that Earth stands with Vaxira. Whatever this threat is, we face it together. The young Vaxiran officer's expression showed surprise and gratitude. Thank you, Ambassador. 6 months ago, I would never have believed I'd be grateful to hear those words from a human. As the meeting broke up and everyone rushed to their emergency positions, Seung reflected on how much had changed. The war with the Confederation had taught both species valuable lessons about respect, cooperation, and the dangers of prejudice. Now they faced their first test as true allies. 3 hours later, the mystery was solved. The approaching fleet finally responded to communication attempts. They were refugees from a distant galaxy, fleeing a terrible enemy that had destroyed their homeworld. They came in peace, seeking sanctuary and assistance. The combined human Vaxiran response was immediate and generous. Humanitarian ships were dispatched to help the refugees. Medical teams prepared to treat their wounded. Diplomatic teams began working on finding them new homes in uninhabited systems. It was exactly the kind of response that humanity had hoped to receive 30 years earlier when they first reached out to their neighbors. That evening, Seung stood on the observation deck of the Alliance headquarters, looking out at the stars. In the distance, he could see the lights of human and Vaxiran ships working together to help the refugees. It was a beautiful sight. Quite a view, said a familiar voice behind him. Seung turned to see Admiral Kyung approaching with a cup of coffee in each hand. He offered one to the ambassador. Thank you, Seung said, accepting the warm cup. I was just thinking about how different things are now. Different is an understatement, Kyung replied. 6 months ago, we were enemies. Today, we're protecting refugee fleets together. Do you think we did the right thing? The war, I mean. Kyung was quiet for a moment, considering the question. We tried peaceful contact for 30 years. They ignored us. Sometimes the only way to get someone's attention is to make them respect your strength. But we could have continued trying. Diplomacy. For how long? Another 30 years? Another century? Meanwhile, how many other species were being ignored or oppressed by Confederate arrogance? Shung nodded. The Admiral was right. The war had been short and decisive, but it had changed everything for the better. Not just for humans, but for all, the smaller species that had been dismissed by the Confederation. The refugee fleet commander asked to speak with me tomorrow, Shung said. He wants to thank us personally for our help. What will you tell him? The same thing we should have been told when we first reached out to the galaxy. Welcome. We're glad you're here. How can we help? They stood in comfortable silence, watching the stars and the ships moving among them. Humanity had finally found its place in the galaxy, not as conquerors, but as protectors and allies. The age of being ignored was over. In the distance, a new ship appeared, Captain Jai-hoon's exploration vessel returning from its first joint mission. Soon there would be more contact with new species, more opportunities for cooperation and friendship. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders, and now finally humanity was ready to explore it as equals among the stars.